Hi there again, Jay Larsen with the Idaho Technology Council coming to you from the Boise Entrepreneur Week. We have Ken Brook with us today. And
Hello.
Ken's got a great story as a kind of a digital technologist in advertising and has moved here from multiple areas, but most recently from Sandpoint down to Boise.
Yep.
Tell us a little about you, Ken.
All right. Well, thanks, Jay. I'm happy to be here. And so my background's in digital advertising technology. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I recently moved to the area late last year, so it would make sense for me to be here at Boise Entrepreneurs Week. And right before COVID, I wanted to get out of Los Angeles. I had my office there in Santa Monica around the beach. And my last venture was MetaX ad chain. And I was looking to have a change of pace in both my professional life and my personal life. So I found myself traveling a lot, and I landed here.
This is interesting because I heard you say you were on the beach down in California, which is always an attractive place, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you have that. What caused you to want to move out, from California to Sandpoint in Idaho?
Really, it was just to kind of take time for myself, to have some self-reflection, like just to have the time and space. And nature has an amazing way of healing. And so I just wanted to put myself in nature. And so you can't beat North Idaho.
Oh, you can't.
And I love fishing, so it was a great spot for me.
Yeah, we already said this, Brook has the last name of brook trout. I mean, you probably...
many brook trout.
Yeah, many brook trout. Yeah. This is kind of interesting because 36% of the people that are moving into Idaho over the last 3-4 years since COVID have come from California.
Yeah.
And so we've been kind of really looking at that. What are the reasons behind that? And for you, it sounds like, I'm not trying, I love Zen moments, you know, where you kind of get balance is really a big part of life. It sounds like that was a big thing for you.
More important than people realize. And I think people are starting to realize that more and more. And I think COVID was really kind of a paradigm shift for people's thinking as to work-life balance, what's really important. And they start to look at their current situation, like, why do I live here? Why do I work in this office? What am I doing? And so there's a kind of a shift.
Oh, a major shift, and I think that's one of the big things as you continue to evolve in your career and all the things that you're interested in. That's probably one of the biggest things is figuring out how that balance is. And Idaho has one of the things that seems like it's really attractive for Idaho is we seem to have a balance right now. We got to keep that, right?
Yes.
So you moved from Sandpoint, which, Lake Ponderay. You lived in I heard Sagal, if I read that right.
Yes, I did. Off of Treefort.
Is that right?
The dirt side of Treefort.
The dirt side. So, we inducted Forrest Bird into the Idaho Technology Council Hall of Fame, who was one of the top. He lived up in Sagal. I don't know if you heard of him, but he passed away about 5 years ago. But he was one of the top doctors that helped bring respirators, like the bird respirators and stuff like that, to be able to help people from the iron lung years ago to respirators.
There's not many people in Sagal, but
I know it was crazy. He was fantastic. But so you came to Boise. Talk about why you came to Boise.
I was invited to be a part of the Hackfort event, the technology side of Treefort. And so Sean Wakely is someone that I met up in Sagal because his father lives up there. And so I befriended Sean Wakely, and he was the director of Hackfort. And he heard about my story, and he's like, you got to come to Hackfort and talk about it. And so that was my first time visiting Boise, and I kind of fell in love with the city. It's a small city, but it's big enough to have that feel of a city. And I loved all the people, and I started to learn about the community here. And I went running up in the foothills. And I was like, okay, I can spend some time here. And then I just didn't leave.
You were a Sun Devil, is that right?
Yes.
Down at ASU, where you ran a lot in the desert.
Do
you like the mountains a lot?
Much better.
Oh, isn't this nice? And the cool air.
This is running weather. Tempe, Arizona, it doesn't have running weather. It was brutal.
We'll have to.
But as an entrepreneur, you got to grind through it. So it taught me a lot.
You're gonna have to talk to Ed Vasco, who's back here in the back. He moved here from the same area. So.
Oh wow.
So.
Great. Well, a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is. So.
Go Devils.
Okay, so here's the big thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the backside of what your experience is, but what I'd like to do is maybe start with your vision right now, what you're trying to do right now, and
Sure.
Because my understanding is at your heart, you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right. So talk a little bit about why that is and what your activity is right now with entrepreneurship.
Sure. So at this point, I'm 37, and it's safe to say I'm very much an entrepreneur.
You don't look 37, by the way. But that's amazing. Yeah.
And
you look 40. No, I'm just kidding. You're much younger.
Growing up, I was always curious, deeply curious about how things work.
Right.
It wasn't enough to use, a toy. I had to take it apart to see how it worked.
Gotcha.
I would never put it back together, but I would take things apart.
Yeah.
And, I would figure out how could I do something that I love and get rewarded for it.
Right.
An example, I lived in Dublin, Ohio, and I met an older family friend, Harold, who would just tell me all these amazing stories about his life, but he'd also teach me things about the woods and, ginseng root. So I would always be out in the woods exploring anyway as a kid. And then he taught me how to find and identify ginseng. And then he would say, this is what we do with it. We dig up the root, we dry it out, we grind it up, send it overseas, and then 2 weeks later you get a check. And so I would go out in the woods and I would dig up ginseng, we'd mail it out, and then 2 weeks later I'd get a check for $60.
Wow.
And then my parents would always try to bribe me for allowance money to do my chores. And I was like, I just got $60.
Now you're going big time, right? You're going big time. I don't need to do those chores.
I'm
going to
like
go do
9
ginseng.
years old, 10 or 9.
Yeah.
So
what do you think? What are you working on right now? Because it's advertising, digital advertising type stuff is where your passion is, right?
Yeah, I graduated with a business degree from college, and then I just got into computers because I hadn't ever really gotten into technology. Like how does I wasn't a computer science major. And so I jumped into the world of computer science and just did custom software development, started by building mobile apps, Android and iPhone apps, iOS apps. And then that eventually led into analytics and marketing analytics software. And then I got into digital advertising. And that's when it clicked for me that digital advertising is kind of the cash flow of the internet. It's what funds the free internet, and it's unregulated. Right. And so as a technologist, I could build software that's not regulated that taps into this huge economy of the internet.
Oh, it's monster. E-commerce and everything that takes place. I mean, how much now is purchased online versus what was 10 years ago, right? Or even 5 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I just, again, being deeply curious, it was a big enough field to get lost in and just let my curiosity as an entrepreneur go with different startups. And I would just build tools to, drill into that particular part of the internet. Okay. And so I started ad networks, and then I got into distributed ledger technologies after I read the Bitcoin white paper.
Yeah.
And then, so going back to your question, what I'm working on now is called Adprompt.AI.
Adprompt.AI.
And I'm building an ad server that automates the entire process of buying and selling media online. And so right now, if you want to run an advertising campaign, there are manual processes that exist. So you have to go in, you have, depending on what type of marketing you're doing or advertising, it could be keywords for Google search. It could be, targeting parameters in Instagram, so like the Meta platform,
right.
Or, Google. So I want to take away all of the manual parts of that.
The manual parts. And the name of the company again?
It's Adprompt.
Adprompt.AI?
Yes.
Okay.
Adprompt.AI.
Adprompt.AI. I think anytime you put, it's like, you just put word digital in front of everything, and that was a big thing. Now, you put AI in something right now?
Yeah. I mean, we've had 4 talks. It's the first day of, Boise Entrepreneur Week. We've had 4 talks so far, 2 of which is on generative AI.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah, you're right. 100% agree. Well, we're going to look forward to hearing more about what Ken Brook does with his entrepreneur drive, which is inspiring. So thank you so much, Ken, for being part of what we're going to do. Yeah, appreciate it so much. And we'll be back. But first, a word from our sponsors for Boise Entrepreneur Week.